Yeah.
I didn't feel it. What, which part?
The red.
Oh, it's been like that. You just have it. It's the bright lights.
Ready.
I got a video, by the way. I think, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
We won't laugh much.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Highland Neighborhood Association meeting. And tonight we have a special guest. We have Bob McCormick. Bob, would you like to come on up? Thank you. Take this. You go right on ahead.
Okay. This is somebody else's. Don't move it. It's got me on the screen. It's a little bit of a distraction. Can I close it or just?
No, it's recording.
Okay. Yeah, it's recording my chest. You know that. Well, anyhow, Bob McCormick, thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be back in the area and an honor to be here talking about a 1,700-mile walk. I talked before I left about why I walked, and I'll get to that kind of at the end. But right now, it's a walk. So, as you know, a lot of people know because a lot of the same people who are here tonight were there. One is to send me off. That was August the 2nd. I had some friends and neighbors who drove us out. I didn't want to walk from our house and through Denver. If any of you saw my cart, you'd know why. But to walk through downtown Denver, and so we had some good friends, borrowed a truck and took us out. I can't even remember the name of the airport. It's an airport just south of DIA, and we started there on August the 2nd. And originally I was, if you can see here, originally when I left, this is taken by the people who dropped me off, so obviously I'm 10 feet into my walk. But originally I started, the cart itself is my daughter's double wide, and for pushing my grandchildren, appropriate. And I started out pulling it, and I thought that was going to be the easiest way to go. I had 2 poles, and I had that harness strapped around my waist, and every time I wanted to stop, if I wanted to drink, answer the telephone, out of the harness, put the poles down, the whole thing. It just got to be too much trouble. And so the majority of the way I ended up pushing it. And my daughter told me that all I had to do, because the handle was too low, which was one of the reasons I was pulling it, and the handle was too low, so Dad, you can just flip that thing around. And so after about a week and a half, 10 days, I flipped it around and realized it was so much easier to push than it was to pull. So I became a pusher, and I pushed it the rest of the way. And the way itself, at 1,700 miles, remarkably, you can walk from here to Indianapolis on Route 36, which is Colfax Avenue, which is what the sign said when I left from the airport, Colfax Avenue, and it stayed that way for, 5 or 6 miles, and then it changed to Route 36. I was on 36 all the way to Indianapolis. Originally, when I asked for a route from Google, I think Sherry and I did it through Google, and it had 19 pages of instructions. And some of them were walk 100 feet, turn right, walk through it. It was kind of like, there's no way a 69-year-old who's, a new walker can follow 19 pages. So I opted for a different route, and my opt was Route 36 all the way to Indianapolis. So it was really easy. Every morning when I got up, I could look at the sun, walk towards the sun, and that was my day. And to Indianapolis, and I forget the total mileage, but once you got to Indianapolis, which, well, you have some idea, there it is. After that, you get on Route 40, the old national highway. And so I walked Route 40 the rest of the way, avoiding again all of the different turns and everything else, so I had that down. and I got to Cumberland, Maryland on Route 40, and from Cumberland I walked the C&O Canal Path. So it was a treat to get to Cumberland because Route 36 and Route 40 are both truck routes. And only a walker now, after having walked a long way, I'm very, very aware of shoulder width. When I'm driving my car now, I can't help it, but boy, there's a nice wide shoulder to walk on. You know, wide, flat, it was really, and if there was no shoulder, that was a long day, because it meant being totally aware of traffic all the time, which changes the whole feel of the walk, as you can imagine, if you've got to be alert for traffic. So, but I kept walking, and the Cumberland Trail was beautiful. It was also very lonely. I got used to it, and I'll get to that point, but I got used to seeing people every day. And I probably walked 3-4 days without seeing a soul on the Cumberland, on that trail, C&O Canal Trail. And it was fine, you know, but it's just different than having people that you say hello to, or somebody running up with a bag of apples or something like that. Again, I'll get to that. But on December the 9th, I made it to D.C. with a lot of help along the way, and I would really be remiss, I should have already said something by now. My wife Sherry is sitting over here. Sherry was, I don't know what you call it, about a help that you can't describe, but that's what it was. Sherry was all on the way, and even from the very beginning, because it was 3 o'clock in the morning when I woke up and I told Sherry I'm not going to talk, because I was going to talk at the garage about intergenerational justice, and I told Sherry that, no, I think I'm going to walk, and she was like, okay, you know, you're going to walk, you're going to walk. So I was gone for over 4 months, and Sherry took care of the place, and also there was a big notebook at our house that Sherry was my logistics person. You know, it would be like, Sherry, I need a place to stay tomorrow night. And Sherry would get really into it, and she was, you know, concerned about it because I'm out walking, and she knew that if I didn't have a place, it was going to be a rough night. So anyway, thank you again, Sherry. And we'll get into that. Oh yeah, places that I called home. When you're walking that type of walk, it's not like you can go to a campground or you can go to a motel that's not there. If you walk, in my case I was walking between 15 and 20 miles a day. And if you walk 18 miles and there's no hotel and there's no campground and then you pretty much try to find a place to stay anywhere. And a lot of times it was just flat ground alongside the road. Sometimes it was one up there, that's a deserted barn, that it was a godsend because it was pouring rain and there was nowhere to stay. And I went into an antique shop and I just picked out the first person. I said, hey, look, here's my situation. She said, if you go around the corner, there's an old deserted barn. It's like, really? Yes. Anyway, there was a lot. Normally I would be camping. Sherry found a home. I talked to that woman where I'm fixing the tires. I talked to her, and a lot of places, after I talked to them and told them what I was doing, then there was no charge, which was really nice because we were doing this on a limited budget, and that was a place that I stayed for free. The next place I also stayed for free, that's a livestock shed. And one quick thing about it was another case where it was pouring rain. I saw it, was like, thank you, and went in. There's nobody to ask. If there was somebody for me to ask for permission, I asked for it. But there was nobody here. Shortly after, there's another picture, I think it'll come up later, but shortly afterwards, a police officer shows up. Now I'm inside that place. It's filled with spiders, but they're not bothering you. But police officer shows up and he says, I saw you walking back there and I already called the owner of the property and you're good. Excellent, thank you very much. So anyhow, all along the way, obviously that's just a few pictures. The cave was along the C&O Canal. That place over here, that was Thanksgiving, and those people couldn't have been nicer to me. which I'm going to get to that too. But anyway, so I tried to find anywhere that I could. I stayed in a lot of really, for lack of a better word, awful motels. On Route 40 and on Route 36. That's no longer the main drag. I-70 is the main drag. So the hotels have basically dried up. But there always seemed to be at least one. And I'm going to get to another picture. But anyway, I was surprised to find out after about the third motel, they were all of Indian descent, from India. And, you know, first, once or twice, didn't. By the third time, it was kind of like, I got to ask you, you know, this is the third hotel I've stayed in, and it's all been run by Indian families. What's the story? Well, I found out a wealthy man bought a hotel in every one of those towns along Route 36. And Indian families stay there. They have gardens. They stay in the hotel. It's the perfect way, in a way, perfect for an immigrant family that really can't afford a lot, you know, because they're working there, but there's nobody staying there. A lot of times I was the only person staying. I don't know what's going to happen in the long term with these families, but right now there's a lot of beautiful gardens. They grow all their own food. They cook because there's nowhere to eat. The diet, once you get outside of these major cities, I can tell you, is awful. And I'll get to that when we talk about poverty. Three things that struck me along the way, not so much, you know, like the first day, but after 2-3 months of walking, it starts to be a pattern that came to bear. And the three things that I walked away with that I had no way to anticipate beforehand: kindness of U.S. citizens, poverty, and I'll get to that, and we live in a beautiful country. You see it differently when you walk. I should talk only for myself because I've driven almost those same identical roads. Sherry and I usually will try to stay off I-70. Yes, they're there, you know, at 70 miles an hour. I can also tell you it's not flat. Eastern Colorado is not flat. Kansas is not flat, at least not on the routes that I was on. Colorado was a bear. It's like a washboard, except the peaks. Oh, thank you. Good. Excuse me, just. The peaks of the washboard are about 3 or 4 miles apart. So you're standing on one of them and you're looking what's in front of you, and it's nothing but all down and then all up, down and up. So I did a lot of that. It was probably a good way to get started because it got me in pretty good shape. By the time I was into it, maybe for 3 or 4 weeks. First, on the kindness part, I've got pictures. I've got 200 pictures. Obviously, I had to narrow it down. These are all pictures of people that I did not know. And every day, 2 or 3 people came up to me and was like, "Can I get you? Do you need some water? Do you need money?" You know, that was one of the things, or just a helping hand. You know, whatever it was, like I said, I wasn't prepared for that type of kindness. So that was really kind of something I'll carry for the rest of my life, that we read about everything about people being angry and everything, all the rest. And I know a lot of people who attend churches and socials and the rest, they're all very kind, but from a walker's standpoint, I don't know them. It's not like walking into wherever you know everybody. It'd be like, "Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I love apples, you know. I love a candy bar, a cold drink." In the beginning, anything, a cold liquid was liquid gold. It was 95 degrees on a number of days when I was walking. So, and I could go over all these. This group, I'll just hit a couple of them. Postal guy, only postal service guy that helped me. But anyway, that group on the bottom, those guys were all pipe fitters, belonged to a union. I was walking in. They were staying at an inexpensive hotel because they're roadies. These guys are on the road all the time, and so an inexpensive motel. And I walked in. They saw my cart, saw the sign. "What are you doing?" You know, "Well, I'm walking." Told them. you walked from here to Denver? Yeah, I did. So I went and got my dinner, and I came back, and when I came back, they'd done a collection between them, and they had $140 for me. You know, $20 a man, and it was kind of like, hey, thank you guys. You know. So anyway, there was a lot of that. The fellow fixed my tire, a flat tire for nothing. That young lady with the dog, I talked to her. I didn't have a place to stay. Her place was full. And so she said, I'll tell you what, I'll come down and pick you up on the trail and I'll take you to a hotel. It's about 5 or 6 miles away. Which, from walking, I had people say to me, oh, you're no trouble at all. You just go down here, turn right, go 3 miles, and there's a campground. Well, they just don't realize what it's like. Walk 3 miles and then walk 3 miles back. I'd rather just sleep by the road. Anyhow, she picked me up, and the next morning she came back and picked me up and took me back to the trail. So it was just one of those, you know, to me, thank you. Thank you. I made a lot of thank yous along the way. The next slide is just more of the same. Everybody up there, that young couple, one of my favorite places to find, if I could stay anywhere close to a Waffle House. Because in the morning it was either REI schlop, put in hot water, long spoon, eat it out of the bag, or if I could get a good breakfast, and I really would fill up on breakfast. Breakfast was my biggest meal of the day. So I would fill up on that. That couple just walked over and said, hey, we saw your sign, we're buying your breakfast. The guys down there in the middle and the bottom, that was, my car broke down. I had Sherry on the phone, and she knew I was really upset. My car broke down, my leg was bothering me. I'm walking in Springfield, Ohio, and traffic was terrible. The hotel that I stuck my head in saying I'm going to stay at the very first hotel, I couldn't. It was awful. And I limped in with a busted cart, leaf spring broke in half. I was miserable. Sherry said, go to the bar, get yourself a drink. And it was kind of like, thank you, Sherry. That's great advice. I really appreciate that. So I did. I walked in and I sat down, and the very first person I sat next to is Jason, the guy on the right. He works at a vocational school. His friend, the fellow on the left, is a welder. He said, tomorrow morning I'll come by, I'll pick up your cart, put it in the back of my truck, we'll take it over there, weld it, you'll be good to go after that. Really? This is like, okay. And that's exactly what happened. I was on the road the next day. So I had a remarkable number of people along the way. That bag of apples, he had gone ahead and picked that out of his orchard and met me, came back after he talked to me, came back and met me with that. It would be also the kindness came across we had a GoFundMe campaign, and a lot of people here today contributed to that. And to that I say thank you if I haven't already said that in person. But that meant a lot to Sherry and I. You know, I was reluctant to put up a GoFundMe campaign, but if people prevailed and we had one, and I'm certainly appreciative of all the people who contributed to that too. So, and then the poverty. I don't have a lot of pictures, and part of that was by design. I felt funny taking pictures of people's homes that I thought were so poor that it was worth taking a picture of. And I could have taken 1,000 pictures, because unless, for me, I needed to walk to realize the depth of poverty in our country. And I just finished, 3 people recommended I read Hillbilly Elegy while I was gone. And when I got home, I still hadn't picked it up, but when I got home, somebody gave it to me for a Christmas present. And I read it, and there was portions of it that I easily could have written, because we see the same thing. He saw it from his lifestyle, where he grew up. I saw it by walking through, but we see the same thing. It's intergenerational poverty. It's for the first time I realized why, and I was not political all the way, and I'm not about to blame anybody now, and I won't in the future either. But for the first time, I understood why people voted for our current president. And I didn't understand that. But when you have no hope, and whether it's true or not, somebody comes along and says, I can promise you hope, then you take it. And I can tell you there's a whole lot of people who have been left behind. And I know a lot of, my neighbors, people in Denver, we're all doing pretty well. But between here and Washington, D.C., I can tell you there is an awful lot of poverty. Homes that are falling down, cars that are falling apart. They're all old cars. Can't keep them up. They're polluters. The air is bad. Storefronts all boarded up. And you see it pretty much the whole way. I started talking to a few people, and I would call it seemed to me like it was a donut. That if you took a town, every town was like a donut. And not all of them, but enough of them. The downtown area itself was very nice. You could tell there was money there. But to get to there, you had to walk through one side of the donut, which is a really poor area. You go through downtown, then you walk through the other side, and you're walking through another really poor area. And there's an awful lot of towns that are like that. And if you read Hillbilly Elegy, he'll tell you why, and what he sees as being intergenerational poverty and nowhere to go. The diets are terrible too, and because there's only Dollar Generals or Family Dollars. And that is not only where you buy everything that you need, including your groceries. And the food is terrible. And it's way too prevalent, I would say, from my own experience. But a whole lot of that Motel Washington is, that's Washington, Kansas, I believe. And it's an Indian family, and I just took a picture. But although the Indian families are not, by their own standards, really poor, the reason that they're there is somebody purchased a hotel for them, and they're living there, and there's nothing to do. There's nothing in the towns. When I went through Oberlin, Kansas, I think it was Oberlin, there's another town. His picture's not here. He's a farmer, Rick Thompson. And he and I had breakfast together. Third generation. Problem is that Furniture Row is buying up all the farms out there. His farm is 1,000 acres. The town itself used to have three restaurants, 3 gas stations, a regular grocery store. They're all left. There's nothing there anymore because there's no farmers anymore. There's no farmers' families. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. I don't know if you're trying to have food for 8 billion people, it may be changes that occur. But for the people who are still there, it's pretty devastating. They've just seen, like Rick Thompson has seen, is this change that the schools are gone, the restaurants are gone, the gas stations are gone, and not much there. It's a different type of poverty. And there's nobody there that's walking the streets or anything like that because they're all, it's corporate farms. So they don't live there. It's a big change. And interesting from my standpoint. But the motels all on that route, there might be one in town and nobody stays there. So I got to know a lot of them because I would, most of them are about 30 miles apart, which would be a 2-day walk for me. So in between, I stayed wherever I could. The beauty, I'm not, unfortunately, Jed Davenport is a neighbor of mine, and he also gives a lot of presentations. And if you don't know Jed, he's a photographer for National Geographic. So I always think about Jed's when I try to take pictures. But again, I have a whole lot of pictures. I just tried to get it down to something just indicative of what I was seeing on a daily basis. It's really, from here until the other side of the Mississippi, it's a lot of big sky. It's just, and I found it to be beautiful. Again, not so much if I were walking. If I were driving. And even riding my bike is a little different. But walking is slow. And you get to spend a lot of time by yourself and with whatever's around you. So it was, I found it to be, I could go through a whole lot of pictures. But the question, of course, it comes up if you're doing, at least it came up in my mind. I won't talk for any other walkers, but in my mind, is it worth it? Because there's a lot of times it was, sure to tell you, it wasn't easy to just get up and it was Groundhog Day. You know? Get up, get dressed, get some food wherever you can, and walk. And the hardest part was from when the alarm went off in the morning until I was behind the cart, because what I found is behind the cart I was pretty much at home. I was walking, I knew what my purpose was, I knew what I was doing, and I just kept on walking. But the question, of course, is, you know, my whole purpose in walking, as you all know by now, is to promote intergenerational justice. And so I'm saddled with the thing of, all right, I'm out here walking, but am I really, is it successfully promoting intergenerational justice? And if you feel passionate about something, I came to at least tell myself or convince myself that, you know, if you had a lot of money, that would be one thing. You could take out full-page ads and just talk about intergenerational justice and they would go around, but that wasn't an option. I'm certainly not famous, so I couldn't just grab a microphone and have a million people listen to what it was I had to say. So you walk. And that leaves you with the question of, does this make any sense either? And I don't actually know, and I don't think that I'll probably ever know. I think I'll continue to talk, but I don't think I'll take another long walk. I think it's a one-time thing. So, was it worth it? I don't wrestle with it too much. I can say that I got on the last issue of the Highland Lifestyle magazine. This was no longer. I didn't know that this was going to be the last one until I got this one. But this is the last issue of the Highland magazine. So I managed to get on the cover of the Highland magazine for walking 1,700 miles. I also had a really good experience. Sherry and I were both there with our Senator, Michael Bennett. He was kind enough to invite us to come into his office Monday after I got to D.C. And we had a rather extensive conversation about intergenerational justice. And I don't think that he was just doing me lip service. I think he was very interested. And I obviously was very interested in talking with him. So regarding whether it was worth it or not, thank you, Michael. Made it a little bit easier to think, okay, this is worth it. And also, I had a lot of newspaper, radio, and TV coverage. And I think it's, you know, there's a lot more than what I put up there, but my first time doing a slideshow. It was, the first time it happened, it caught me off guard. It was a TV station. We heard about you, we'd like to do an interview. Great. We spent probably an hour and a half together. And she said, it'll be on tonight's news. Cool. I'll be excited to watch this. So it was less than 30 seconds. And it was, the very first time that happened, it was kind of really? You know, but then 30 seconds is 30 seconds. Somebody heard about intergenerational justice. Claire, who was our volunteer on the other end, she's an old friend of mine, but she handled all the social media stuff. And she told me, and I have no reason to doubt her, that throughout the trip, probably 1 million people were reached. Now, reached means they might have had their TV, that's their broadcast area, and they've got 100,000 people in that area, and we're assuming maybe that all of them were watching that night. I don't know. But I know I was going to go with her number. And it's not obviously a long conversation that I had with people or that they had on that radio or TV interview. But it's a lot of people who maybe heard about intergenerational justice for the first time. And I'm for sure it won't be the last time. And part of the reason that I know that, Harry and I were talking about this last night. Let me go back one. Oh no, I'm sorry. I will get to it. There's a guy running for the presidency who's using the term intergenerational justice. He's the mayor out of South Bend, Indiana. And I'm glad to see it, but I'll get to that. Intergenerational justice, for me, is an idea whose time has come. I think that I might be, a little bit early on it. I did read handbook for intergenerational justice a while ago, and it made a huge impression on the way I think, the way I think about us, all of us. And I've used in conversation, people say, well, I've never heard about intergenerational. Well, there was a time when we didn't talk about racial justice either, or gender justice, or economic justice. And I feel like intergenerational justice falls into that same category. Now that's for me, and it'll be a later talk, or I plan on talking again, but not about the walk, about intergenerational justice. Because it means so much to me, and really it's my grandchildren, you know, and the children that live in the neighborhood. Sherry and I are now picking up kids at school and bringing them back to the house. A lot of young kids, and you know, once you get, in my particular case, once you have intergenerational justice sort of penetrate, it's impossible to kick it out. I carry it around all the time. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I thank Jackie and the rest for the opportunity to come here and talk about intergenerational justice, because, as Sherry would know, it's all the guy thinks about. Which isn't quite true, but it can appear that way to a spouse. And yeah, this is the gentleman that I mentioned. His last name is a really tough one. I've heard different ways of pronouncing it, but the latest is Buttigieg. And he's 37 years old, and he's thrown his hat in the ring. And although it's small print there, you could say he's running, what it says is he's running on the issue of intergenerational justice. Now, his version of intergenerational justice is talking about between current humans. And it's very legitimate, and I think we're about to hear a lot more about it once he gets a microphone and others get a microphone. And it's basically that the generation coming behind us, younger generation, is probably, I think that what's going to happen is they're probably going to get pretty upset when all of a sudden everything stops and you start talking about the environment, you start talking about the debt that they're accumulating, and are we being fair to those who are younger? And I'm not talking about we, I'm talking about the collective, that right now we're reading, you read about it, I read about it, especially towards the end of my trip. UN reports, World Health Organization says that 93% of our children are breathing bad air. The UN climate change study, which ended up being on page 20, was we got 10 years if we want to avoid serious climate catastrophe. Those numbers impress me. Sometimes I have a sense of urgency about it that I just feel, and I can't say it's not important, or it's not me, or it's not, go away, I'm going to forget about it. I don't. I think that we have some very serious issues, not issues that we can't handle. Otherwise I wouldn't have walked. I'm very hopeful. I think that we can handle the issues that are facing us, whether it's environmental or whether it's death. But we're going to have to do it with a little bit more attention to detail than what we have so far. Excuse me. That's pretty much it. I walked a long way. I talked to a lot of people about intergenerational justice. I gave out about 500 cards, and anybody that I got a chance to talk to. Nobody to this date has ever heard of, from my walking and before, in my family, has ever heard of intergenerational justice before we get into a conversation about it. Everybody wants to know, what are you talking about? And I tell them what I'm talking about. I think that as the current humans, we need to take, going back to the intergenerational justice that exists between living humans. For me, there's also intergenerational justice that goes between living humans and all future humans. And I'm not, and I'll finish with this, I'm not madly in love with future humans, and that's why I'm walking. I'm madly in love with current humans too, and I don't think that we can work out our stuff unless we're in sync some way with all future humans. And we've never had to think that way until recently. And that's, to me, that's our numbers. We're 8 billion, approaching 8 billion of us. We pretty much covered the planet. And my parents never had to think about how future humans were going to handle or were going to respond to what we do. And I think it's something that we should include in our thoughts today. Intergenerational justice, especially if we have somebody running for the presidency and he has a microphone and he keeps talking about it, I think is going to become part of our thinking. And I think it's a welcome addition. For myself, I find it to be that way. And I hope you do too, at some point. So other than that, that was my walk. I thank everybody for giving me the time, and also all the people who supported the walk along the way. Pat, Ray DeFay, I was in contact with all the time. I mean, it was sort of a really nice thing. When you're walking and you're away from home and you hear from somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time, it's great. So I always appreciated that. Jackie too. I don't know whether I should get out of here. She's walking over.
No, I'm walking over here because I'm just seeing if you'd like to take questions.
Yes,
Okay.
I would like to
So
take.
this while you take some questions, okay?
Can I have a drink before you take it away? Yeah. Okay.
No, bring it up down.
Any questions at all? If not, this presentation is over. Ta-da. Oh, hold on. Ready?
How did you come across the topic of intergenerational justice?
How do what?
How did you come across the topic of intergenerational justice?
10 years ago, and before that, before 10 years ago, 9/11, people have heard the story of 9/11, kind of rocked my world. And I was very concerned, are we headed in the right direction or are we headed in the wrong direction? And I'd always thought, I was raised, and I think most of us are raised, that every generation gives the next generation a better chance, better set of circumstances. So I was pretty much convinced of that. And then 9/11 happened, and I took a nosedive. And I started to claw my way back only by trying to figure out, wait a minute, I'm not buying the whole idea that we're going downhill and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. Which I still think is prevalent in a lot of leadership positions. That not that we're going downhill, but the best we can do is to work with the status quo. And another talk at a later time. I have strong feelings about that, and I think that we're being a little undersold on what the capacity, human capacity, our potential. I don't like the idea of, I don't think we're going to find answers to our problems in human experience. I think we have to begin to look at our potential. And our potential is, but to get back to your question, so I did a lot of research, really searching, because you're like you're hurting. When you're hurting, it's like you're in pain. You're looking for medication. So I was looking, whatever I could find, and somewhere, and I couldn't even tell you how it got into my life, but the handbook on intergenerational justice popped up, and I ordered it when I first saw the title. And it was, at the time, it's gone down, but it's still like $40. It's a little thin book. I was going to bring it. It was $138 for like a 150-page book back then, which told me that nobody was reading it. So, but I got it, and I read it. It's a very academic treatise, but it's very clear. I mean, if you bother to get through it, it's very clear on do current humans have a responsibility to future humans? And, you wrestle with that question for a little while, and at least in my case, it's, yeah, we do. We have, and there's going to be billions upon billions of humans that follow us if we get our act together. And we may be at a crossroads. And I'm not an alarmist. I'm just saying we're getting information all the time from our environmental scientists, from people who really care. Now, the people who say they're denying or whatever else is, I don't have time. We don't have time to convince every human that we need to do something differently. Intergenerational justice is an effort to put something out there that says, hey, there's a different way of looking at what it means to be human. And I agreed. For 10 years, it kind of festered in my head, and along with a number of other things. But eventually, it was I need to talk about it because I'm killing my friends and family and everybody else. So I need to find an outlet that, the talk that I was going to give, that became a walk, and now I'm back to talking. So intergenerational justice showed up about 10 years ago in my life.
Did you look at Native American culture as well? Because they've been teaching a similar thing for
Yes.
as long as we can.
I didn't have much interface. I had a little interface, I think it was in Oberlin, Kansas, with Native American cultures. But I didn't, when you're walking around, there's two major routes, which I did very, very much on. There wasn't a lot of interaction between myself. But on my own research and my own feeling on it is like most people. Most other countries have done a complete turnaround with their Aboriginal people who were there, and not here.
Well, growing up here in Colorado, we did learn that. I did as a child in that culture in the seven generations, and we needed to take better care.
Yes, actually the point is it's an excellent point, the seventh generation, and you can see it that the Native American culture is one that's much more conscious of what's coming behind them. And they're there, and there's an awful lot of voices out there that should we decide that what we really want to do is we want to be in sync with future humans. There are so many examples, successful examples, of where people have done that, and looking forward, looking down the road. So it wasn't a lot, but I've always been in a sense of admiration for that type of long-term thinking, which is another way of saying intergenerational justice to me too. It's, are we doing any really serious long-term thinking? Are we thinking about all humans, or are we thinking about some humans? Are we thinking about long-term, or are we thinking about short-term? And so far, we've been able to do quite well thinking about some humans in short term. I think it's catching up with us. Okay? And it's perfectly okay. That's what I'm saying. To think long term, to become long term thinking humans, to just consider, future humans down the road, it's not painful. It's not going to change us overnight. It's just going to give us a different focus. And I think that focus is maybe what's missing. Somebody else will have another opinion, and I would say it's probably just as correct as mine. But for me, if I had a magic wand, it would be that we have to become long-term global thinkers. And it's perfectly okay. Everybody doesn't quit their work tomorrow. We're just going to include future humans in our policy decisions. Anyway, any other questions? Yes, sure.
Did you meet with any other quote-unquote leaders when you were in Washington? And what came out of your meeting with them?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
When you were in Washington, did you meet with other leaders? And also, what came out of your meeting with Senator Bennett?
I didn't meet with other leaders. I didn't meet, if you're talking about political leaders, I didn't meet with any political leaders. The second part of your question, I still didn't quite get if it was what I would recommend, or...
What kind of response did you get from him? Did he do anything to help?
No, he didn't offer any, and I didn't ask, I think that my feeling on this particular part of my own, efforts to present intergenerational justice was that I wanted to throw it out there. I wanted people to hear the phrase. I wanted them to think about what it means. So I didn't know what to ask Senator Bennett to do, except to listen and to talk with one another. I listened to him too. He thinks of intergenerational justice more along the lines of what the mayor of South Bend, Pete Buttigieg, thinks, and that's generational. Are we being fair to our younger generation? And I totally agree with that. That's something that we need to talk about. At the same time, we also, as humans, we need to talk about intergenerational justice as it relates to future humans, not just the ones who are already here. And if I had something to say about that, because I think that there's going to be a battle that's going to come due. I think we're just beginning to see it now. The mayor of South Bend, if he begins to start to talk and runs for the presidency on intergenerational justice, I think that there's going to be an awful lot of people who come out of the woodwork, mainly younger people, who say, what are you doing? Because our debt, that last year, I mean, we're up to $1 trillion added to it. I mean, it's not going to go away. It's going to have to be paid. And it's the same thing with putting last year, 2018, in spite of all of our efforts as a country, 2018, we put more carbon into the atmosphere than any prior year. Now that's, we know, and that still goes on. And I'm not up here to say, hey, we're all at fault. It's our lifestyle. And that lifestyle is going to take its toll on those coming behind us. And there's a good chance in my mind that if we're not too far from the point, and we're seeing it here, and if it becomes part of the presidential election, that's going to become a very debatable point. And it's going to be very difficult for us to defend ourselves from somebody who says, hey, what are you doing? We've got to pay that debt back. How are we going to get the carbon out of the atmosphere? So, and to me, again, a big motivation, I'm old, I'm 69 years old, and I've got grandchildren. If I don't have any grandchildren, I'm 32, 33 years old, I probably have a different attitude. I did have a different attitude. But I'm at this stage of my life now, and I get back to, is it worth it? Are you being effective? I don't know, but I feel like I have to do something. I've just gotten to that point where it's like, wait a minute, my grandchildren, your grandchildren, somebody's going to have to pay the bill. And I do think that there'll have to be cooperation between generations that are of current humans. Because in the long run, to me, it's our relationship with future humans that's really going to dictate the human story. If we continue to deny that we have any responsibility for them, I don't know where we're headed. I think if we accept that responsibility, I have a lot more hope in us, a lot more faith in us. And I think we're about to do that personally. And I'm an optimist, and I am hopeful, or I obviously wouldn't have decided to walk 1,700 miles, knowing that, at least in my mind, I think that we're going to rise to the occasion, and it's for our grandchildren, for our children, for future humans. Anyway, I don't know whether that answered your question or not, but...
What did you do for a living?
I had my own business for years. I was in the insurance business. I was an insurance consultant. I had a wonderful career. I had, all my clients were nonprofits with employees overseas. A very unique need. And I provided them with medical coverage, life insurance, whatever they needed. And my clients were friends. It was all word of mouth. It was a wonderful, I made a lot of money. I spent a lot of money. I didn't spend it on toys. I spent it on exactly why I'm here right now. I just kept thinking that I could do something. And so I spent a lot of money. And Sherry, of course, wish I didn't spend it all. But yeah, it ended up, it worked out fine. But it was a lovely career. Thank you for asking. So, anything else? Otherwise, we'll get on to whatever's next. I see Amanda just showed up, so I better step aside. Anything else? Nope. Yes.
Tell us the story about the cows.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll end with the story about the cows. A long time ago, I have no idea why. A long time ago, I thought that I could actually sound like a cow, and so I just started making cow sounds. And what I found is, over time, that the cows would actually come. They would get up from where they were laying down, and they would come to wherever I was calling them. And knowing that I was trying to get people to listen to anything I had to say about intergenerational justice, I should have just been a cow caller, because more people saw that video and responded to that video. I did a video of myself calling cows and put it up, and it was it was the biggest microphone I had. I got more input based upon that video. And you're probably wondering, I know somebody's going to say, well, what does a cow sound like? You want to hear a cow?
Yes.
All right. It's a little without water. And it works every time. I did it too often. I would tell myself when I was walking, stop it. You're wasting time. I'd be calling cows. They'd be coming. Anyway, it goes like this. Ta-da! Anyway, thank you. I will leave this here for you. It's propping up your thing, right? Okay. Thank you.
Oh, he's still thirsty.
It's the cow call.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So we have the Whna committee updates, design and preservation. Do we have any updates?
Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Cloyd, Chair of the Design and Preservation Committee. One of the things I wanted to do was a reminder that, as you may recall, Councilman Rafael Espinoza has made the offer that if there's a person or a group of people who are homeowners who have an interest and think their house might qualify for landmark designation, he has offered that he would, what they say is carry that nomination, which basically means the $250 application fee is waived and he would carry it forward. So I wanted to bring that up because given Mr. Espinoza's decisions, this is now a limited time offer. And really to get it through the process, you probably would need to be started now. I'm hopeful that our new candidates or new council person will carry on that tradition. But I wanted to mention that. Another item was I've been attending the Colorado Preservation Incorporated Preservation Conference this week. This is a statewide organization, about 800 people from all over the state who are into the preservation thing, and all over the state. Durango, Lamar, Fort Collins, etc. And we had the opportunity to listen to Governor Polis on the topic, which was pretty interesting. I'm hopeful. I'm glad he showed up. He's a very, very busy guy. But I would say that I could see a contrast between him and former Governor Hickenlooper, who, as you may remember, he started a business as well, but he started it in a historic building in downtown Denver when it was pretty rugged. I don't know if Governor Polis did any of his business in a historic building. I haven't heard that. But Hickenlooper would always be very, very enthusiastic. And so anyway, Governor Polis said the right things, but there's that level of enthusiasm I didn't hear. So I was just observing that. And on another note, too, our own Marie Benedicts was there as a panelist talking about lessons learned from establishing historic districts. And so she would very eloquently spoke about her experiences with the Packard Hill, and I think it was very beneficial to the people attending that session. And then I'll just conclude. There's been a suggestion, a request that at a future meeting we do a presentation on living in a historic district. We've had a lot of ownership changeover, particularly in our two older districts, Ghost and Wolf. And so at a future meeting, we kicking around the idea of bringing in somebody from Historic Denver, the Landmark Preservation Commission, and also somebody from History Colorado who might talk about the tax credit program, which is available to residential owners. And if you think that's a good idea, or if you have specific elements of that you think should be addressed, just let me know. I'll be hanging around here after the meeting a little bit. And I believe that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I'm Trevor Greco. I'm actually standing in for Dan and Chelsea on the liquor license committee. Is Mark Bezbers? Mark, could you come in? Come up. So Mark, I'm going to botch your last name, but Bezrens or so, can introduce, is from Three Dogs Tavern. They're looking at expanding their liquor license to include a patio. And so Mark's here to tell us what the plan is.
Hey, everybody. I always forget this is a crazy big neighborhood association because I only brought 10 of these, so I don't know if you want to in the show. But I guess long story short, as most of you know, there's outside of our Three Dogs building on the front side, there is a what appears to be a patio and a railing that's been there since we redid the building from BJ's Market. And that was to accommodate, back in the day we did that to accommodate the pet store that used to be right next door to Three Dogs. And for those of you who weren't around in 2002 or 2003 or so, that's, there used to be a pet store on the east side of Three Dogs. And so we never bothered to take that railing out, but it used to protect for handicap access to roll down the sidewalk and access the pet store. So that railing has always been there. It's been a bit of a smoking area for the last 18 years, but with the new storefront that we put in on the building last summer, we've had a lot of people say it seems silly that we can't just take our beer and stand on the other side of the storefront. And so if you look at the drawing, you won't visually, there's really no major difference other than we would replace the railing that is on the on that existing concrete piece, and this piece here is about 3 feet wider toward the sidewalk, stopping just short of a water valve that you'd see by the bus stop there. But that is essentially what we're proposing. And we have on the 26th, we have a Board of Adjustment hearing because we have residential proximity to the east and across the street. And so that is the process we've been through a couple times with both our Spot Bar and Grill on Pennsylvania and Bayard. And while we just sold the Irish Hound, we had similar residential proximity on 3 sides at the Irish Hound on 6th and St. Paul in Cherry Creek North. So I would say probably half our stores in downtown Denver, we have a patio that encroaches upon residential zoning. That's kind of been our shtick. And so we're pretty well versed in how to operate that setup, and that's kind of it. So
Does anybody have any questions for Mark? Eric?
How many tables, how many people might sit out, what hours, what do you do to mitigate sound?
You can't have any amplified sound outside, and I don't know if this is still the case, but it used to be you couldn't have any additional lighting. My guess is that somehow that's been eased because I see a lot of festoon lighting on similar patios around town. But we wouldn't have any plans to augment lighting or put TVs or anything crazy out there. If you see on the drawing, there's just a perimeter bench that would fasten to that fence piece that would face the crowd, presumably in toward the building. It should be about 24 seats all told. But with it being a bench seat, who knows, you could have 30 people if you had small people and 16 people if you had big people. But for many, many years, it was a request of our staff that we activate the storefront at Three Dogs. And for those of you who remember Three Dogs back in closer to 2000, it was a very, very different establishment than it is today. It was, I wouldn't say it was out of hand, but it was a much younger, harder charging crowd, and noise was much more of an issue back in those days. Of course, we had our neighbor Glenn right next to our parking lot who monitored that for us pretty closely, and Angel across the alley in the back. And I'm glad I don't hear from them with any frequency more. It's dictated if this was granted, if the board grants this variance, you have to close 10 o'clock, by 10 o'clock on weeknights and 11 o'clock on weekends. So I anticipate that would be what we would do.
Any other questions, Sheila?
Are those the same hours for the operation inside?
No, we're open every night. We're open till 2 a.m. Inside. Yes, ma'am.
Are you signing a good neighbor agreement, or do you have one already?
No, we haven't had one, and I don't really have a plan to sign one. Dan sent me one. It's not something that we've done. We don't have those really at any of our other properties, so I don't think it's something we do. It encumbers our license, so.
I just thought I'd say that I've never had any trouble with your business, but I don't live right next door to it. And of course, you haven't had this before, but I do live next to a business, or not next to one, but very close to one that has this outdoor patio. And I don't like it, I can tell you. And another thing I hate about it is that once it gets installed, it doesn't go away. It's like a liquor license itself. It's never up for renewal. It's always part of it's sold with the property. And that's one of the problems we really have with this whole liquor license situation in this city is that every time the businesses are sold, the new owners, can even do some things that you don't want as a neighbor. Sure,
that is, and that'll never change. In this particular case, we also own the building, so I don't think there's any foreseeable threat of that, but there's always that chance. We have cabaret laws in Denver, and I think neighborhood groups like yours always envision a cabaret license could be put to use to open a giant heavy metal bar that has thunderous music all the time. And unfortunately, that's often why we don't have a thriving music scene in Denver, is you can't have a kid come in and strum a guitar and play acoustic songs either. So I think there's always a worst case scenario. I think we've lived with these conditions across the city for a long time. You mentioned liquor licenses not coming up for review. If you have liquor code violations, your license does come up for review. You have to show cause that it be renewed. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that we've not had that circumstance with any of our locations, and we have 24 bars, many with much closer residential contact than Three Dogs has. So I would tell you if I was concerned about it, and I probably would never have allowed them to install the operable storefront on the building last summer if I wasn't feeling like the neighborhood has changed to the point where we're not going to have a lot of Jägermeister drinking young people hanging off the patio causing a ruckus. So.
I have one question. You have smoking out there now, so how do you regulate so you can't have smoke not go in someone's yard, but how do you make sure that it's kept clean? Do you sweep it? Do you have a cigarette butt put out or?
We have an ashtray out there now. I think if we do this, my guess is we'll go to non-smoking. One of the big benefits, as a non-smoker myself, but as someone who owns some of the legendary smoky bars of Denver, I thought the smoking ban would be really detrimental to our business. And even Don's Mixed Drinks, which is maybe the smokiest bar of all time, Don's really went to a new level for the positive with the elimination of smoking. So I would anticipate, much like really all of our bars have gone non-smoking, especially on the patio, because there's a lot of people that don't want to sit, and I apologize to anyone who's a smoker, there's just a lot of people that don't want to sit next to smokers, and so they sneak out there now because they can, and if if this changes, then they won't. So, or they'll have to go around, I guess, the other corner. But they ought to be sweeping that up every day and keeping it clean. And they're not always perfect about doing that, but they ought to be.
Great. Last question in the back.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I pick up the bus at that stop, and I can see every day that it's really clean, so good job for that. But I was curious, can you say again how far out the patio will extend? And is it only going to be on the north-facing side?
Yeah, it's only if you can imagine where the railing is right now, it would come out another, I want to say it's 28 inches from how wide it is right now. You actually can we could have gone out farther than that, but there's a water valve in the sidewalk there that's just not worth relocating. So I think it's about 9 feet from the storefront out, and that represents roughly roughly 3 feet from what's there. But visually, it actually should look nicer. I think the vertical railing will look nicer, and at least what my staff has told me is that several of the neighbors across the way are very supportive of, or have said that we should do this. So I'm sort of taking them at their word.
So, sorry, so it would be about 3 feet, an additional 3 feet out.
Out, yes.
From where that railing's now.
Yeah.
And it will be like the length of the building from east to west.
No, it'll basically start, for slope reasons, it'll start right near where the front door is. So it probably starts, I don't know, it's maybe a dozen feet in from the eastern corner of the building.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for coming out.
Yep, thank you for having me.
All right.
And if anyone has any questions, like I said, there's a Board of Adjustment hearing on the 26th, so there's a lot of time, 3 weeks before that. And then after that, if that's granted, then we'll proceed with, I think we have to then go to the city for design approval or architectural approval, and then liquor licensing. So it's a pretty long road. So if any of you have any questions or concerns, I know Ray and Pat are longtime friends of my family, and so while I don't ask them to vouch for me, they certainly know how to get a hold of me. So
Great.
thanks
Mark.
everybody.
Pat, any updates? Pat, any updates for the social committee?
No updates. We have a great social in December. And thanks for those who attended.
Thank you for organizing it. No updates from transportation. Ray, anything from land use and planning? No? Well, we do have a new volunteer, and she wishes to start a new committee. So Angela, if you don't mind coming up. Yes, a round of applause for new volunteers.
Hello everyone, my name is Angela Bogue and I live near 30th and Irving. I am pretty new to the neighborhood, less than 2 years here. But I am very passionate about environmental issues. By day I work as a research scientist up in Boulder, and by night, or on the weekends I guess, I would really like to start a sustainability committee within our neighborhood association. I just came from the sustainability committee meeting for Highlands, the honey folks over there, and started to get some ideas from them. And it could really be sort of whatever we would want it to be. The city of Denver did have, I think it still does, sort of have a really interesting sustainable neighborhoods program where neighborhoods can be certified as either participating or outstanding sustainable neighborhoods by doing things like community bike rides, getting more urban gardens established, educating community members, perhaps even doing more ambitious projects, getting renewable energy projects going in the neighborhood, those sorts of things. And it sounds like the program has maybe lost a little steam or isn't as well funded as it should be, but I still think there's some wonderful resources and networks for us to tap into. I also don't want to reinvent the wheel. I know that there are some wonderful green efforts going on with some of the churches in the neighborhood as well as some of the schools. So really I'm interested in coordinating some of those efforts. Just making our neighborhood even greener. So I'd love any folks who are interested in joining to volunteer on the committee. I'll be trying to rope in some of my friends as well, and hopefully we can get some stuff going. So.
Absolutely. So whoever's interested, see Angela after the meeting.
Yes.
Any questions?
Any questions? Yeah. No? All right. Okay, well, I'll be here. Thanks.
Great, thanks. So before we open the floor for non-agenda items, we will have need for elections for Whna, and I'm trying to remember the exact month. I think it's in May. But we need to form, per our bylaws, an election committee. So we actually need a total of 4 people, I believe. 2 of them need to be non-officers. So we're looking for 2 volunteers. It's pretty easy. We usually go to a bar, have a beer, talk about it, and out comes something. But with that is anybody who's interested in running for any of the offices, or officers, I guess, of the Whna committee, now is the time to put in your name in the hat in the next couple of months. The election committee main purpose is to fulfill the ticket, if you will, but we'd like to get as much new blood as possible in. We also have opportunities to increase the officers if we even have more people that are interested, and we can share the burden. Oh, I mean the joy of being here. So, but with that, so whoever's interested in that, please see Jackie or myself after the meeting. We'll vet you out. No, just kidding. So with that, we'll go ahead and open the floor for non-agenda items. So those who wish to speak, if you can come and line up on the side over here, we ask that you keep it to 1 to 3 minutes, just in the sake of time, and come up and feel free to speak your mind about whatever you would like, or to announce anything that's going on in the neighborhood, or any office that you may be running for. So with that, I guess we'll start with Amanda.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Sandoval. I know many of you. I used to work for Councilman Espinosa, and in November I took a new job. I currently work for the Denver Fire Department.
Sorry,
I know
it's
your rules.
recording it for those that
I
can't
should already
listen to
know
the
this.
meeting. Thanks.
So hi, let me start over. My name is Amanda Sandoval. I used to work for Councilman Espinosa, and in November I started working for the Denver Fire Department. I'm their legislative liaison and program outreach manager. And when Councilman Espinosa decided that he was not going to seek another term, which I know we all appreciated some of the work he did for Northwest Denver, I decided to put my bid in for city council. And I am born and raised in Northwest Denver, graduated from North High School. My family's owned a small restaurant on the corner of 36th and Tijon, La Casita, since 1975. My husband, who's in the back, and my son, who's in the back, many of you have heard me talk about my kids. Now they're here. We have a junior at North High School and an 8th grader at Skinner. And some of the things, I'll just be honest, I'm accustomed to coming here and getting really into the depths, really talking about projects and talking about the update on 32nd Avenue that we've been working on since before Susan Shepard was gone. And talking higher level for me and having these overall general outlook for neighborhoods is challenging for me, because I like to come up with solutions. I like to be part of the solutions that we all have. So when you were talking about the historic designations, Paul, absolutely, if I were to be elected, we would keep that going, because you've helped us on so many that we've worked on now with the certificates of non-historic status and making sure that the the owners who seek a certificate of non-historic status are aware of what that impact means, and making sure that we talk to them before that's done. So we were able to stop 5 certificates of non-historic status while working for Raphael. And with rezonings, I was a lot of times the negotiator because of how Raphael sat in a quasi-judicial manner. I was able to talk on rezonings, so I'm well versed on land use issues. So some of the issues that I really like to see that would impact is for sure the 32nd Avenue update that we have been talking about for 4 years. And I'd also want to see a feasibility study. I know we've been talking about that since I worked for Councilwoman Montero, and getting that in the budget, because upon election you would get you'd go into office in July, and one of the first major tasks that you'd have as a new incoming council person would to be working on the budget, because I know these cycles of working in the council office. So anyway, my name's Amanda Sandoval. My website's really easy, Amanda Sandoval. No Northwest Denver. I just chose to go real simple. And if you have any questions, I'll be in the back. And just once again, I just want to say, if it weren't for registered neighborhood organizations such as yours, what are we without the people? That's really what this is supposed to be about, is running for council. It's really always supposed to be about you. So I just want you to know that I love Northwest Denver with all my heart, and I would always still make it all about you. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Moline. I just wanted to remind everybody that the buildings here at Highlands, both this one and the one on the corner of 29th, they're available for rent. There's some information on the back table there with the website information on it. And we are going to have on March 9th is a fundraiser for the Highlands Center on art and music. The Highland Square Ensemble concert is going to be at 11. It's for all ages, children and adults. It's called Revel and Raspberries. And following is an intergeneration concert. There'll be an hour of open art studio for all ages, and stations for rhythm games and music and movement. In the evening on March 9th, Miguel Espinosa Flamenco Fusion Band will play at 7 with wine and cheese, and art just before at 6 o'clock. The tickets will be sold for the evening concert at the door. There'll be $25 of donation. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Good evening, I'm David Cebedos. I know I had a chance to talk to many of you back in, I think it was December, when I came shortly after announcing that I was running for Denver City Council in District 1. And I want to thank you for having me back here today. I know some of you heard my talk last time about how we could be creating more affordable housing, better transportation, and increasing wages across the city to make sure that we're actually building an economy that works for everyone. But I wanted to say something maybe a little different tonight. We had some amazing talk about intergenerational justice before, and I'm 36 years old. I don't always think of myself as the youngest candidate, but I would actually be the youngest member of Denver City Council. And when we look at what helping that next generation of folks who have been moving to our city, and about 60% of this district is now actually under 40. When we look at the folks who were raised here or have moved here, and what it takes for folks to be able to afford rent, what it takes for folks to be able to get a mortgage for their first home. These aren't academic challenges in my mind. These aren't another issue to be parsed out as a talking point. These are the real issues I know that my fiance and I face, most of our friends face living in Northwest Denver. The challenges of, like I said, being able to make sure that the ends meet at the end of the month, that the wages are enough to be covering our income, our rent and our mortgage every month. So I think I'd love to have a conversation after, a little more about how we can build that together. But thanks for listening. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Liam Gray. I'm from the Denver Public Library, the Woodbury Library, just on 32nd and Federal, right on Highland Park. Just want to let you all know I brought calendars, February calendars that include programs that we'll have for children, families, adults. Of particular note, we're having the great-grandson of Booker T. Washington come, Eric Hughes. He'll be presenting on February 23rd, which is Saturday at 2 p.m. We'd love all of you to come. We're also having an anti-Valentine's Day party on Valentine's Day. It's not so much for anti-Valentine's, we just would like for people to have a good time. It's going to be casual, good chocolate, and good fun. So, anyways, if you have any library questions, please direct them to me. I'll be around later on. Take care.
Hi, I'm Marie, and I'm a neighborhood volunteer. I just wanted to give you guys an update. You have possibly heard me talking about a ballot initiative before, and some of you have signed a petition, some of you have carried a petition. Thank you all very much. This is to give Denver voters a say when it comes to deciding whether we should spend taxpayer dollars on the Olympics. So the news is that initiative was certified or approved or whatever happens when you've collected enough signatures and the city has checked your signatures. So that initiative will be on a ballot in 2019. It will not be on your May ballot, but we don't know which one it will be on, but it will be the next citywide election after that. So if you see something about the Olympics, what it does is it basically says, do you support the idea that forevermore, before the city of Denver decides to spend any taxpayer dollars on the Olympics, whether bidding for it, hosting it, guaranteeing it financially, that Denver voters should get a vote in that case. If you think that's a good idea, please vote yes, and I'm sure you'll hear more about it closer to the actual ballot it will be on. So, note of celebration, it was approved, it will be on a ballot in 2019. Thank you all for your support, and thanks for listening.
And seeing no one else in the line, can I see by a show of hands any new attendees? This is their first month. Sort of Angela in the back, but you made our social last month, so you started out right. Well, welcome and thank you for volunteering. See, first time, first volunteer. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.